Hello to anyone who've stumbled across this video. I wanted to do a video on my bed rack, the Ibex by Kuat, and it's a really nice rack. It's beautiful to look at. They put a lot of thought and time into the engineering. I'm moving from a ORO rack. It's a Canadian company, uh, Overland Rack, Ontario, and it was a great rack. It was a mid-height. A great guy that runs that company. Highly recommend it. But I wanted something that was a little more versatile. So this rack can be changed from mid to full height. It's supposed to be coming out with a panel kit, which is the main reason I got this rack and not went with another ORO rack. Um, the panel kit basically makes it into almost a cap for your truck. So I thought that would be great. I know it's going to be pricey because anyone that knows anything about Duet, their stuff is not cheap. I did have a bike rack of theirs, the Sherpa 2.0, great rack as well for bikes. But again, I was hoping for the versatility. I'm getting older, so I don't really need something as strong and as brute tough as the ORO is. I don't do a lot of hard overlanding off-roading. I stick mainly to woods roads, park camping, and I do most of my camping in the spring. So April, May, fishing season here in Nova Scotia for trout when it first opens up, less bugs, ticks aren't out. That's when I do most of my camping. I wanted to make this video because I ran into a couple things installing it that wasn't really mentioned in their video. I couldn't find anything on the internet about this, and there might be now, because I haven't looked since, but it's more about the installing of this section of the rack to these two top and lower parts. They come with these very long bolts that screw in, two going into the horizontal and two down into the vertical, two up into the vertical, two into the horizontal, all four corners. And very long bolts. And when you first start putting them in, they show this in the video. They don't really mention it in instructions. I'd use an impact wrench, like a DeWalt or a Ridgid, because you'll never get them in by hand. And when you first start, first thing that went into my mind was, well, I'm cross-threading because it's going in so hard, so difficult. And when you pay $2,000 Canadian for a rack, you're worried that, oh, geez, if I strip these out, they're not going to replace it. They're going to say it's my fault. I didn't get a retailer to install it and put it together to me. So I panicked. I tried. I backed it out. Tried a couple other corners to see if it was just me, and no, it was difficult. And I did think in my mind, well, maybe where it's aluminum, there is no threads. You're just basically drilling through the aluminum and creating your own threads. But it's anxiety, thinking you're wrecking the rack, so on and so forth. So I did call them. Great customer service. Talked to a guy. He puts the racks together. And the first thing he said, oh, no. He said, you're not cross-threading. He said, you're drilling out the threads. And I said, well, that should be in the instructions because anyone that puts anything together, when you're running into that much difficulty putting a bolt together, you think you're going against or across the threads. He said, yeah. He said, that's right. The other thing I asked him about, they give you all these torque specs for all the different screws, and there's a lot of them when you put this together. And it's not a difficult rack to put together, but there are quite a number of bolts throughout the rack. He said, he said, I put lots of those together. I don't even use a torque wrench and torque them to a specific spec. He said, we put those in the instructions because people kept asking for it. He said, tighten them down, hand tight, check them a couple weeks later, hand tighten it back up, and you should be good to go. Again, information I could have used before I put most of the rack together. And the reason I asked him about it is because the clamps that clamp the rack to the bed of your truck, if you don't have a Tacoma or a Tundra with the T-tracks, it is a smart bolt in it. It has a pin in it, so it can only take the Allen key that they give you in the kit to tighten it. and yet they give you a spec of amount of torque to torque it. Well, you can't buy a bit with a fit in there because there's a little pin in the bolt, and there's a hollow hole in the Allen key that they give you so that it fits in there. And that, again, that's so no one can steal your rack. Great idea, really, because you wouldn't want that to happen. But when you're thinking about, wow, they give me a amount to torque it to, I should be doing that. They probably won't cover me by warranty. So that's why I called them about that. And said, no, don't worry. I said, yeah, he knows you can't. You have to use that key. Hand tight. Don't over tighten it. Make sure the rack's not moving, and that's what I did. So those are a couple things about putting the rack together. Again, if you think you're cross-threading those long bolts, if you're going full height with your rack, you're not cross-threading anything. They're actually cutting the threads when you're putting the bolt in. The other thing I want to talk about is how stiff this rack is. So I just bought the rack. I bought one little
MOLLE panel,
my propane tank, and that's it. I didn't buy any other extra accessories at the time, and for many reasons, they're extremely expensive. I thought in my mind, I'm going to get that panel kit if it ever comes out, and a lot of the accessories probably won't be compatible once you have that panel kit on. But once I got it together, and before I put the tent on, I gave the rack a little heave just to make sure everything was tight, and there was a little lateral play in it. And driving on the road, park camping, probably not going to be a problem. But any off-roading that you might do, even if it's a light off-roading, kind of concerned me a bit. I didn't know what to do about that. And then I remember going through their website and seeing that they had a front
MOLLE panel.
What that looks like in a second. And I thought, well, I bet you that is to reduce the amount of lateral play. So I go back to the website. Long story short, I bring that panel up, and sure enough, what they say is, for peace of mind, you may want this front
MOLLE panel.
Will stiffen up the rack. In my mind, it should be just part of it. It should come with the rack, even if they have to charge an extra $500, because that's what the panel costs in Canadian, about $500. Because it made a world of difference. It does help stiffen up the rack, and especially these cross members here, you can actually get rising for them, put them up even higher. You would definitely want it. If you're starting to get that much higher, so you can go above your cab, you'll want that front panel. So if you're thinking about buying this, I would just bite the bullet, buy
a MOLLE panel,
because it's going to save you a lot of anxiety and wondering if you're getting a little bit of lateral play. And I see too on their website they even sell the riser kit with the front.
a MOLLE panel.
So they know that you're probably going to need that. And I'll just show you what
I'm just going to show you what the front MOLLE panel looks like. Very thick gauge aluminum, and of course you'd want that to stiffen up the rack and prevent that lateral movement in your rack.
Strong, no play to it, and that will help reduce that lateral movement. While I have the camera up, I do want to show you this
MOLLE panel.
It is very thin. Like, look at how much that moves. I did call them on that, or I guess I wrote them an email. Because I was concerned. I'm putting my 5-pound propane tank on there. It's very thin, and it's almost $100. I mean, that's ridiculous. But they said, it's extremely strong. We know it's a little flexible, and maybe that's part of the engineering. Maybe it's supposed to flex a bit to distribute the load. But it was a little worrisome to me for something that's so expensive. Like, that's almost 100 Canadian.
So the front MOLLE panel was around $440 Canadian, and if you wanted the full size side panels, they're over 500 Canadian. So the MOLLE panels are very expensive for this setup. The quick blast to the future. Sure enough, the small MOLLE panel did snap almost all the way through. I did end up putting the propane tank mount on the front MOLLE panel, and that seems to be working out great. Now, I contacted Kuat, and they were awesome. They apologized. They had me send some pictures. They asked me a bunch of questions so they could try to solve the problem. And then they sent me a whole new piece. I didn't want another MOLLE panel because I wanted it for my propane tank. So they sent me a grab handle at no extra cost, even though it's a more expensive accessory.
So this is an early review. Like I said, I haven't done any real off-roading with it, even on rough roads. Like I said, I do most of my camping in the spring, and so I won't really get to experience that until next spring. It's middle of summer here in Nova Scotia right now. But it is a very nice rack, and again, if you're looking for something that's versatile, that you can change the height, that can fit probably a lot of different size truck beds, has a lot of accessories, this is a great rack. Is it as strong as some of the other ones that are specifically made just for overlanding? I don't know. Time will tell. I'm hoping it is. I think it has a dynamic load. Oh, I can't remember. I think it's 300 pounds. And I can't remember what the static is. So it's not a lot, but so far so good.